What if the man you loved chose to disappear, not because he stopped loving you, but because he believed his broken body made him unworthy of your heart? Broken Heart Quang's story is one of pain, sacrifice, and silent love. Rescued by a poor family, taken to the hospital, and told he may never walk again, he makes a heartbreaking choice, to hide from his mother and Linda so they can find happiness without him. Stay with us as we unfold this emotional journey, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that touch the soul. Quang had thought his life was over the moment he collapsed on that desolate roadside, blood soaking through the torn fabric of his trousers and the throbbing pain in his leg growing unbearable with every heartbeat. His vision blurred, his strength drained away, and for a terrifying instant he believed no one would ever find him there, alone and broken. But fate, in its mysterious way, sent help when he least expected it. A poor farming family, worn and weary from a long day of labor, happened to pass by the narrow dirt path where Quang lay. At first, they hesitated. After all, they were struggling to survive themselves, and taking responsibility for a wounded stranger could mean more hardship. Yet compassion outweighed fear. The father, his hands rough and calloused from years of toil, knelt down beside Quang and placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "He's still breathing," the man whispered to his wife, who stood clutching a basket of withered vegetables, her eyes filled with both worry and pity. Without a second thought, they lifted Quang onto an old wooden cart, the kind usually used to carry firewood or sacks of rice. Every movement sent a jolt of pain shooting through his injured leg, but Quang lacked the strength to cry out. The children of the family, barefoot and wide-eyed, ran alongside the cart as it creaked slowly back to their small thatched home at the edge of the village. Once inside, the mother hurried to boil water and tear strips of cloth to bind his wound. Their home was modest, its bamboo walls thin, its roof patched with straw, but it radiated a warmth that Quang had not felt in what seemed like forever. Despite their poverty, they treated him with a kindness that humbled him to his core. They fed him plain rice with salt, offered him a straw mat to rest on, and spoke to him gently as though he were one of their own. For days, they took turns tending to his fever and watching over him through the night, even though they could barely afford medicine for themselves. Quang saw how meager their meals were, how the children often ate less so he could have more, and his heart twisted with guilt. Why would strangers, who had so little, give so much to save him, yet their compassion did not end there. When it became clear that his leg was in critical condition, the family gathered together in the dim glow of an oil lamp to discuss what must be done. The father's voice was heavy with worry. "If we do not take him to the hospital, he may lose his life. But if we spend what little money we have, how will our children eat?" The silence that followed was agonizing. Finally, the mother placed her weathered hand on her husband's arm and whispered with quiet conviction, "We cannot let him die. If it were our son lying there, wouldn't we hope for someone to help him too?" It was then that the decision was made. Though their pockets were nearly empty, they resolved to bring Quang to the hospital. They sold a few chickens, borrowed a little from a neighbor, and set out before dawn with Quang bundled carefully in the cart once more. The road was long and bumpy, but their determination never faltered. As the sun rose, casting golden light across the fields, Quang realized that these strangers, this humble family with nothing but their goodness, had given him something far more valuable than food or shelter. They had given him a chance to live. And though his body was weak, tears welled in his eyes as he silently vowed never to forget the sacrifice they had made for him. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and faint smoke from the nearby streets, a strange mixture that made Quang's stomach churn. He had been wheeled in by the poor family who had saved him, their faces lined with exhaustion but still full of concern. The doctors worked quickly, unwrapping the makeshift bandages and inspecting his wounded leg. Quang gritted his teeth as the pain surged, but what unsettled him most was not the sharp sting of the instruments or the blood-stained sheets, it was the solemn silence of the doctors. Their brows knitted, their eyes flickered with a gravity that spoke louder than words. Hours passed before one of them finally approached his bedside. The man's voice was steady but carried the weight of truth that could shatter a heart. "Your injury is severe," the doctor said. "The bone is badly damaged, the tissue around it torn. Even if we perform surgery, the chances of you walking normally again are very slim. You may recover, yes, but your leg, it may never be the same." The words struck Quang like a thunderclap. For a moment, he simply stared at the ceiling, unable to process what he had just heard. His chest rose and fell rapidly, and he clenched his fists beneath the thin hospital blanket. The images that came to him were not of the hospital or his leg, but of home, his mother's smile, weathered but warm, Linda's eyes, full of love and trust. He imagined himself limping toward them, crippled, unable to stand tall as he once had. The thought twisted like a knife in his chest. He turned his face away from the doctor, blinking rapidly to fight back the tears that threatened to escape. His mind whispered cruelly, "What use am I to them now? What kind of son, what kind of man, comes back broken?" He could almost hear the quiet sigh of his mother when she realized her once strong boy was now a burden. He could almost see the sorrow in Linda's eyes, the pity she would try to hide as she stayed by his side. And worst of all, he could see her future chained to him, a woman full of dreams shackled to a man who could no longer walk freely. The poor family who had rescued him hovered anxiously nearby, but Quang forced a faint smile to reassure them. They had given so much, sacrificed their meager savings to bring him here, and he refused to let them see how deeply the doctor's words had crushed him. In the quiet of the night, however, when the room dimmed and only the rhythmic beeping of the hospital machines remained, Quang allowed himself to break. Silent tears slipped down his cheeks as he stared at the bandaged leg that now felt like a chain anchoring him to despair. The truth settled in his heart like heavy stone. Returning home would mean more than reunion, it would mean condemning those he loved to a life of burden. His mother would spend her final years worrying, straining herself to help him. Linda would never smile the same way again, trapped by duty rather than love. And that thought, more than the pain in his leg, was unbearable. So, as he lay there, the decision began to form inside him, fragile yet resolute. He would not go back. He would not allow his mother or Linda to carry the weight of his broken body and shattered future. If Linda truly loved him, he would repay her love with the greatest gift he could give, freedom. Freedom to find another man. Whole and unbroken, someone who could walk beside her without leaning on her strength. Though the wound in his leg throbbed with each heartbeat, it was nothing compared to the wound in his soul. Quang closed his eyes, whispering a prayer that Linda would forget him and find happiness elsewhere, even if it meant erasing him from her heart. Better that she should hate him for disappearing than pity him for what he had become. And in that moment, the hospital walls seemed colder, the night darker, as Quang realized the path he had chosen would be one of solitude and silence. For Quang, the loss he felt was not merely in the weakening of his body but in the crumbling of the future he once imagined with clarity. The doctors had done their part, the family who saved him had sacrificed more than he could ever repay, but deep in his heart he knew that the road ahead was one he could not walk, perhaps not physically, and certainly not emotionally. The ache in his leg was sharp, but sharper still was the realization that he no longer saw himself as worthy of the love he had left behind. He lay awake many nights in the hospital, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. Each shadow seemed to shape itself into Linda's face, her gentle smile, the way her hand used to slip into his as though it belonged there. The memories tormented him. He longed for her presence, to hear her laugh or to feel the warmth of her embrace, yet with every heartbeat came the crushing thought, if she saw me now, what would she feel? Pity? Sadness? Regret for ever loving a man whose body was broken? That was the torment he could not endure. In the quiet hours, when the corridors outside his room grew silent and the moonlight filtered weakly through the glass, Quang began to convince himself of what he believed was an act of love. He would not return. He would not stand in front of Linda, broken and incomplete, asking her to give up her life for his sake. True love, he thought bitterly, was not clinging desperately but letting go, freeing the one you love to find a better life. A brighter future, in the arms of someone who could give her everything he no longer could. He imagined Linda's life without him. Perhaps, at first, she would cry, searching for him in the places they had once walked together, calling his name into the wind. Perhaps his mother, too, would mourn, her tears soaking the pillow at night. The thought tore at him, but he forced himself to see beyond the pain. One day, Linda would dry her tears. She would meet another man, someone strong, healthy, able to stand tall beside her, to carry the burdens of life without faltering. She deserved that. She deserved more than a crippled man who would always remind her of what had been lost. The decision seared itself into him like fire. He would vanish. He would stay hidden, even if it meant living in loneliness and obscurity for the rest of his days. He would bear the weight of isolation so that Linda could be free. If his mother ever heard rumors of him, if Linda ever searched and found nothing, then so be it. Better for them to believe he was gone than to see him suffer and feel chained to him out of love and duty. There were moments when the choice nearly broke him. At night, when his body trembled from pain, his heart cried out for Linda, to hear her voice, to feel her hand against his forehead, soothing away the fever. But then he remembered the doctor's words, the hopeless shake of his head, and the heavy truth of his injury. He could never be the man she had once loved so confidently. That man had died on the roadside the day his leg was shattered. What remained was a shadow, and shadows had no right to steal someone else's light. And so, Quang steeled his heart. He accepted the path of solitude, cloaked himself in silence, and told himself that this, too, was love, the kind of love that sacrifices without asking for recognition, the kind that suffers in darkness so that another may live in light. Though it broke him, though every breath felt like swallowing glass, he whispered into the night, "Linda, forgive me. Forget me. Live on, and be happy."